Okay, thanks, Linda. So we're going to get started with the final cattle chat for the 2013-2014 season. Today we have two topics that we are going to be discussing, with this being our spring kind of edition. We've got Jane Thornton, our forage farm production advisor out of the Surrey's office. She's going to be talking about managing early spring grazing and pasture planning. It still looks a little bit like winter out there. We got another skip of snow overnight here in the southwest, so but something we do need to start thinking about and planning for the upcoming growing season is some pasture planning and that sort of thing. So Jane's going to talk a bit more about that, and then after her presentation we've got Dobbin from MASC here, and he's going to talk about the Western Livestock Price Insurance Program that has recently been rolled out and is available to Manitoba livestock producers now through MASC. So he'll talk a bit about some of those details. I know we've had a few questions from producers rolling through our offices, so here's a good opportunity to get some more details from him and ask him any questions that you may have. So with that, we'll maybe pass the screen over to Jane, and she can get started with her presentation. Okay, can you see that, Linda, and hear me?
Yes, we can, Jane. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to Cattle Chat this afternoon. It still looks like winter out there to me as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about, first we're going to start off with a little bit of comments about what one can do. We're going into basically our second year of a long, cold winter. And prior to these last 2 years, we've had poor forage production in the province due to flooding and drought in some areas. So it's possible that some people are starting to run out of feed and are looking for alternatives. And I do have to say that in my area, I've seen 2 herds of cattle out on pasture, and I do hope that they are supplementing. So my first comment is sometimes people just don't really plan for spring grazing. They just assume it's going to come kind of as normal. And so what can you do if you don't have a plan and you're starting to run out of feed? Well, a lot of guys have a sacrificed pasture, and we're going to see in a minute or two the feed quality of that pasture, and it is not sufficient to meet the nutrient requirements of a late gestation or lactating cow. So supplementation is still needed, even if you are starting to run out of food or feed. The other is a method called skim grazing, and that's where you sort of take all of your pastures and you move very rapidly around them. I don't know what this means. Linda?
Sorry, Jane. Oh, next that will come up again, Jane. And okay, so the next time it comes up, Jane, just click on the bottom one. I think it says something about keep the settings or something. So, but go ahead now.
Yeah. Okay. So skim grazing is a method where you're not taking the little bit of forage that is there. You're just taking maybe half of it. So you have to move very rapidly, and the reason you do that is, 1, to try to get some feed into your animals, but 2, so that you're not going to injure the grass plant, because the early spring grazing is a very hard time, or a very abusive time to use the forage, because it's just coming out of winter dormancy, and it needs those leaves to photosynthesize and rebuild its food stores. So skim grazing is a way of trying to sort of meet both the animals' needs by taking some of the leaf but not all of it. And because if you're out there very early, there will not be enough feed in front of the animals, supplementation is probably also still required in that case, because you might have good quality forage in those short little leaf stalks, but you certainly will not meet the cow's daily dry matter intake requirements. So one of the things people are starting to do, though, is really planning ahead. Really planning ahead for the pasture to try to extend the grazing season, which means that they're doing it on both ends. And one is, for the fall, and one is for the spring. And certainly we can be out much earlier in the spring and not in the feed yards anymore if we sort of plan ahead for it. And one of them is with stockpiled pasture. And I have stockpiled pasture with supplementation. And of course, when you're planning for stockpiled pasture, you are starting to decide which fields you're going to leave to regrow in about middle of July. So the growth that you see in this picture here, the cattle probably came off it or it was hayed about the middle of July, and then it was not touched again until this time in March. Stockpile pasture is often used in the fall, but it is actually a very good resource for the spring as well. I'm just going to look at some charts here now that show you the actual forage quality of a number of different forages that we did back in 2000, about 2000 to 2002. And this yellow line up here represents the crude protein that a lactating cow needs. And that would probably be very similar for a very late gestation cow. So cows that are out on pasture right now, whether or not stockpiled or it's just, so the remnants of last year's pasture, you can see that none of them meet the crude protein level that's required by that cow. And that's why we're saying that we need to have supplementation, because early lactation or just after calving is a real critical time for the cow. You will have delayed first service conceptions and also lower weight gains by not supplying adequate nutrition to the cow at this stage of their cycle. So you can see that everything is below. There's a couple lines I'm going to point out here. This blue one is alfalfa. And all the nutrition or all the protein in that alfalfa plant is primarily in the leaves, and the leaves of alfalfa are shed as soon as the frost starts to hit. So you can see that this was data on 4 sites over 3 years, and the average thing that happened was all the leaves fell off, and you can see that it's in those stalks that are left are in the range of pretty good straw, but certainly not anywhere near high enough for a lactating cow. When we look at energy, the same thing is happening. The yellow line represents that your lactating cow is meeting 60% or greater TDN, and all but one of the forages are not meeting that. And again, this blue line is alfalfa, and of course, because it's dropped its leaves, it's just stalks out there in the field, so they are way below the nutritional requirements. So what you're trying to do in supplementing is bringing up this feed. So it's kind of almost like feeding a straw and feed-based diet in the winter, only that straw is standing on the stalk in the field. Stockpile pasture is actually a pretty good way of getting out onto the fields earlier, and it does have some other benefits other than just providing some feed for your cattle. It does provide a good, clean, dry bed, usually for new calves and calving cows, because of the bulk of the forage that is there. So another thing that you can do in planning ahead is to plant early grasses. And I have plus supplementation here, and in this case, in this field, I took this field, I was driving one day back in May of 2004, and I walked out into this field, and this is a field of meadow brome and crested wheatgrass, both of which are very early grasses. And this pasture, I can tell you, is definitely meeting the nutritional requirements of these lactating cows. And there, you can see the height of the forage is pretty high on these cows as well, so I'm quite sure that they're able to get adequate dry matter intake as well. The only comment I would make about this field is that the cows are very spread out on it. And crested wheatgrass is a grass that puts up a lot of seed stems, and they're quite stiff. And if the cow doesn't eat them in that year, or at least trample them down, they stand through the winter. As you can see, some of the clumps here have stood through the winter. And then the next year, the leaves coming up through it, the cow will not put her face into that pokey material to get those leaves. So you get what you call wolf plants. So in a case like this, I would probably run some cross fences with temporary electric fence and increase the stalk density so that those cows are forced to eat those stems down, and or the material within them, and if they don't eat it, at least knock it down. And then, because crested wheatgrass is incredibly nutritious, like it's probably at 22% protein and very high TDN at this time of year. So Crested wheatgrass in particular needs well-drained soils, and so probably lighter soils in that area. It won't do well in clays in Manitoba. The prairie provinces were a little bit too wet, and if it's on heavier soils without good drainage, it gets crown rot and doesn't last very long. Another comment I wanted to make about early pasture is look at these two plants on the side here. They are exactly the same species and they were picked at the same time. This one is more advanced, it has more leaves, and it's probably 2 or 3 times the production. That's fertility. And so if you want earlier pasture and you only have enough money for fertility on one of your pastures, you might want to think about fertility on your early spring pasture because it will make it come on earlier, more of it, and more advanced stage. So that's something to keep in mind. So building an effective grazing system. Oh, one other comment I wanted to make about early planting of forages is you can use annuals or plant something like fall rye in the fall, and it'll be ready for grazing early in the spring, and because you're not going to keep it as a crop, you're going to hit it very, very hard, and it will provide that early spring grazing while your pastures get going. So my comment here is it's more than just water and wire. And the reason I say that is because when you're planting a pasture, where your water and where your fences go really impacts how well your cattle will use a pasture. So we're going to look at some of the issues around where and how you put those things into place. I always talk about the grazing principles when I talk about pasture planning. A principle is something that just has to be. So if you go against any one of these 4 principles, then your forage system will start to break down. And one is getting a balance. It's sometimes called stocking capacity or carrying capacity. It's balancing the animal's needs with the forage needs. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Avoiding or minimizing grazing impact during vulnerable periods. And vulnerable periods can be especially the first spring grazing because the plants have to survive through the winter, and other times might be like during very wet periods. You probably all have had cattle go into a very wet, mucky field and pretty much pulverized it, so that's another vulnerable period. You're always trying to distribute your animals evenly over the landscape, and that's got a number of things that we can do to get better distribution. And finally is to provide effective and what I call adequate rest after grazing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So the first thing is trying to determine carrying capacity, and this is different than your stocking weight. Your stocking weight is kind of just what you put out there and how long you leave them. But in determining carrying capacity, we're trying to figure out what do we need to do to protect the forage resource as well. And one of the things that we can do is leaving behind probably about a minimum of 1,000 pounds of per acre of litter. And so you work that into this calculation at the head of time. So say you have 2,000 pounds of forage production on your pasture and you want to leave 1,000 pounds behind, well then you use 50% utilization rate. So you've already worked that into the calculation. So you do this for every pasture that you have. So maybe you have a pasture here of 100 acres and you get a total amount. And then you put in your cow weight here. And usually for cow-calf, we use about 2.5% of her body weight as her dry matter intake needs. And so that'll spit out how much she needs. You can put that into these, all that information that's in these top 2 boxes can then be used down in these two different ways of using this information. This one here spits out, if you have this 100 acres, how many cows can it hold when you want to graze X number of days. And this one says maybe you have a herd of 100 head already, and how many days, knowing how much forage production there is and how many acres, how many days can they graze that and still leave you your 1,000 pounds per acre of litter. So you don't get to use it all, and we're going to look at why you don't get to use it all. So how much litter and what does it do for us? Well, on the good soils in Manitoba, I suspect you're probably going to need about 975 pounds to about 1,500 pounds per acre of litter. And on the lighter soils, about 715 to maybe about 1,100 pounds per acre. These 2 photographs here show kind of what that looks like. And this is hand raked. So you go out in June and you put down a 1/4 meter square frame, and you just rake out the dead stuff. And that's a visual of what about 1,000 pounds looks like. You have to have 2 hands to hold it. And this is a visual of about what 160 pounds looks like. And here's kind of what the pastures would look like. So you can see this is a native pasture. There's some standing stuff, and you can't get litter without leaving something standing. And this one was pretty much stripped bare. And when you think about this, 160 pounds is only about 3 small square bales of hay. And if you were to think about spreading those 3 small square bales of hay over 1 acre, you have to give your head a shake to think that you're not willing to leave more than just 3 small square bales of litter behind per acre. I mean, it's just a ridiculous amount. And if you had those bales sitting in the yard, you might just drive over them with the tractor without any thought at all. So it's very important for your forages. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the litter does. It is not wasted. The litter has nutrients in it, and it recycles the nutrients in place. So the nutrients that are in these forages will recycle in place. It also protects the soil from wind and water erosion, and also protects any moisture that's in the soil. On the Canadian prairies, our most limiting nutrient is water, so protection of the moisture within the soil will always give you more production. So leaving behind the litter is extremely important, and it has to be pre-calculated so that you're not overusing. Nutrient cycling. This is what comes out in a cow pie. So the beef animal on your pasture recycles some of the nutrients back. 79% of the nitrogen comes back out in the cow pie, 66% of the phosphorus, and 92% of the potassium. This litter here also holds a lot of nutrient in it. It's all the calcium, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and a whole bunch of micronutrients, which if left in place, recycles where it is. So this whole thing about carrying capacity and building good pasture systems has to take into account both the animal needs and the forage needs. And I find that producers are really good about knowing what their animals need, but they use the forage till there is no more. And you just can't do that because this little leaf right here is where that plant gets food from. The cattle eat the grass, that's their food, but the grass plant can only get food by the chemical reaction in the leaves called photosynthesis, where it makes these simple sugars, and then it takes those simple sugars and it makes all other structures, so leaf or stem, proteins, enzymes, vitamins, lignin, all the things that the plant needs. But if it doesn't have this leaf to do that in the first place, it can't go through this chemical reaction, and if it can't go through the chemical reaction, the plant can't grow. So it's a real balancing act between you need to feed your animals, but you need to leave enough behind for this plant to carry on with photosynthesis so it can meet its needs. So I ask this question often at meetings, and my question is, what is the main purpose of a grazing system? And often producers will say, well, to make more pounds of beef and all that. But to me, that's sort of the outcome. But the purpose of the grazing system is about control. And it's about controlling your livestock, when, where, and how long they graze in an area. And really, to me, the reason we want to control the animals is because cows, for one thing, have no economic sense. They do not care if your farm is going under or in economic hardship. She's just going out there and doing what she does. And secondly, she also has no environmental sense. So the cow does not care if they're destroying your resource, your pasture, or your water. So it becomes your objective or your reason for going to a system where you can control their behavior somewhat, and it's to your benefit. So here's just a picture that I put down of cows doing their behavior, and you're not influencing the behavior other than maybe complicating it a little bit more by putting the salt or mineral in an area that already attracts the livestock. So one of the things about a good grazing system is it distributes the animals well. And in a case like this with the shade, which is already an attractant, and the salt, which is also an attractant, put beside each other does not help get the cattle to the far end of the pasture. So you can see the tracks where the person came to check on the cattle, and they drove up here and they dropped this new salt block there, which is a reasonable thing to do because it's convenient, because they know at certain times the cows will be laying down during their cut, and they can check their livestock for health and issues. At the same time, they can check to see if there's enough salt. But the one thing placing the salt here beside the attractant of the shade does not do is it doesn't help distribute the cattle. And we want the cattle to distribute themselves because we want them to use most of the forage resource that they can, not overgraze the forage resource near their favorite areas, and deposit the manure, which is full of those nutrients, back on the land where they were actually grazing. So often when we get into grazing systems, we start putting up fence. And the reason we do is because if this star represents a favored area, when you have just a big pasture, that favored area will get grazed 100% of the time and get zero rest. On the opposite side of that, you might have plants over here that get zero grazing and 100% rest because they like these ones best. Just by dropping in one fence, we can guarantee this favored area 50% rest and maybe push the cows to eat this forage over here that wasn't quite as favored by them to eat it a little bit. And again, if we drop another fence in, now this area that's favored gets 75% rest and is only grazed 25% of the time. And again, if we go even more extremes, then now this area's got 94% rest and only grazed 6% of the time. Going to something like this causes increased stock density, and you can make animals, like I was talking about that spring pasture with crested wheatgrass, eat stuff or at least trample it down so that there's always an even playing field amongst all the plants in that paddock. So how many paddocks do you need? Well, you take the rest period and the longest rest period and you divide that by the grazing period plus the number of herds, and that equals the number of paddocks you need. So an example is 90 days of rest with 2 weeks of grazing period and 1 herd. And it ends up that you're going to need 7-point-something acres, so you need 7 to 8 pastures essentially. And notice that I put in 90 days of rest. And in my experience, the producers getting the greatest benefits from their grazing systems are incorporating greater than 60 days of rest and some as high as 120 days. Science also supports what these farmers are finding, and research has found that the length of the rest period is the most important factor pertaining to grazing. The other 2 factors are intensity, so how much we take the plant down, and the frequency, so how often that individual plant gets clipped, basically by the cow eating it. So even though intensity and frequency are somewhat important, allowing that plant ample rest in between is actually more important. So systems with greater rest for each paddock are producing more forage. So I've got just some examples here of the waters in this pasture at this place, and it also has shade and salt in the same place, and kind of what can we do with this? Well, water or getting power so you can move your water around is quite expensive, and so you might want to do something like this with an alleyway. The shade and the water is still here, but the salt would go out in each paddock that they're going to. If you're in fairly productive soils, putting in this kind of infrastructure will probably pay. If you're on poor soils with poor regrowth, so some of the droughtier areas or sandy soils, generally speaking, the really intensive management because of the infrastructure inputs will not pay. So, but you can still get a sort of rotational grazing system by fiddling around with where your water and where you place your salt and mineral. And I'm just going to kind of show what I do here is I take my salt blocks from there and I put them up there. So now the cattle, Jim Garish discovered through research that cattle go from water to grazing and then to salt. So if we have the salt here first, they're going to be kind of grazing in this area. I mean, it's depending on how big this is, they may occasionally go up there, but generally speaking, they're going to kind of stay to this area. Oops, hit the wrong button. So now when we do this, we encourage them to come more up into this area. And you can even go to the point of developing another water source, closing off that water source, and again changing your salt to different locations, and now you get them. It's not as foolproof as this, but not nearly as much infrastructure. And so on poor soils, this kind of a system might be the way you want to go. Water placement. This is more of Jim Garish's work down in Missouri. He found that after cattle had to go more than 900 to 1,000 feet, forage utilization decreased. So his example was on 160 acres or so, the cattle were wasting about 20% of the forage because it's kind of farther away and they don't go up there as often, and so it gets ripe and they just sort of don't eat it, and they overutilize the area closer to the water trough. Another thing that was discovered is that if the cattle travel more than about 900 feet to water, they go as a herd. And why is this important to you? Well, it's important because if you have a large herd, then you have to have a very large trough and you have to have a very large refill capacity. So if you can make the water go to the cattle will come and break off into smaller groups and go to your water source as much smaller groups. So instead of maybe 150 head heading off to the water, you might get 20 or 30. So your trough size can be smaller and your recharge capability can be much smaller as well. Here's an example of the alleyway type system, and you can see that this whole herd is coming as one. You can see that they have either a mineral or a salt dispenser here, and I'm sure the water is up here. And one of the things I don't really like about the alleyway systems is you're harvesting forage here, but you're depositing a lot of nutrients on bare ground that can't make any use of those nutrients because there's no plants growing there. So you do what you have to do, but realize that there's some consequences. This is sort of a easy way or maybe a cheap way because you couldn't get water to the other end of the pasture, but you waste all of this ground and you waste the nutrients drop in that soil. So here's the same system. Now we put in temporary electric fence and just piped water along and dropped spigots so that it can be, you could use this as a bigger pasture, or you could drop a fence across it and you could get water from both sides. So, you know, you can water from here or from here to there. And then again, you drop your salt out in these areas and not in one place. The pinwheel or wagon wheel system is often used, generally speaking, on remote areas where you have one water source and it's hard to get power or anything to do anything with that water. This puts in the rotational system, but unfortunately it does create some problems of its own. And here's an example of sort of that kind of a system. And we have the water, we have the mineral, and I think I saw a salt block in here too, and then very nearby is the shade. And one of the things that this isn't showing is this is actually a hill coming down. So anytime you get a heavy rainstorm event, these cattle trails are going to start to wash out, and you're going to have more mud down here and eroding soil up where you should have pasture. So not all wagon wheels are, you know, with the center in at the bottom of a hill, as this one is, but they do create this, and I have been on some pastures just because of the fences start to squeeze the animals down. You can sometimes have up to, I've seen up to 12 trails running in from each one of these paddocks down to the water source. And you can see here in this picture, I put it up again, we've got the salt, we've got the mineral, and these cows are depositing their nutrients onto bare soil. And that's mining nutrients from this part of the field and depositing them where they can't be really good. And nutrients are really important. You need to be cycling them in place. Another comment I wanted to make about this, or about this kind of a system, is when you put a water system in like this, put your fence small enough around it so that you can have the length of one cow and enough room for another cow to walk behind. And what that does is it discourages the cows from using this as a loafing area. You want them to come get water, and you want your mineral and your salt out in your pasture, and then they go back out to lay down instead of laying around the water trough. And it will stop this sort of bare area with huge high nutrient loads in it. And it's about the nutrients not doing you any good. So this was a study done back in about 2000. We took very overgrazed pasture. They wanted to see what the production was under the continuous grazing, rotational grazing with corrected stocking rate, with addition of 50 pounds nitrogen or 100 pounds or split application. And you can see you've got a huge bang for your buck here going to rotational with about 2.5 times the production of just the continuous grazing system. And remember that this rotational grazing system also had the stocking rate adjusted so that it had accounted for how much litter you were going to leave behind. As one producer once said to me, I took my cattle and I went to a rotational grazing system, and all I did was then overgraze on a rotational basis. And so if you don't put that carrying capacity equation into there so that you know that you have enough feed for the number of head, you are forced to come back to your pasture before it has had adequate rest. And then the whole system does not really work. So to get this 2.5 times production means not only is it providing rest to those forages, but you're not overstocked on it as well. And then 50 pounds of nitrogen gave about another 2,000 pounds of production, and the other 50 pounds was just minimal amount more production. So your biggest bang for your buck here was 50 pounds. So if you want to think about this as your spring pasture, you could kind of maybe have this, or you could have this in the spring. So anyway, that is the end of my presentation. So are there any questions?
I don't have any questions right now. Andrea, did you have any questions?
No, I didn't have any specific questions for Jane.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Jane. We can just go directly to Jason's presentation next. We'll talk a bit about the Livestock Price Insurance Program. So Jason, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Andrea. I'm Jason Dobbin. I'm the Livestock Price Insurance Coordinator with MASC. I'm based out of the Portage La Prairie corporate office. And Western Livestock Price Insurance Program, it's a unique and innovative new insurance program for livestock producers in Western Canada. It's unique in the way that never before has there been 4 provinces enter into an agreement to produce a program such as this with the federal government. So what is Western Livestock Price Insurance? It's a program that is a risk management tool allowing producers to purchase price protection on cattle and hogs in the form of an insurance policy. So this program provides producers with protection against unexpected drops in prices over a defined period of time. What are our fundamentals of our program? It's that it would be simple and understandable to producers, that it was voluntary. We have an extreme amount of flexibility within the program. It's reliable and it's bankable and transparent. So those 3 factors place confidence in this program. Also, it's trade friendly. So what were producers asking for from a program like this? They wanted it to be relevant, cost effective, straightforward and understandable, accessible to all, and ensure the risk beyond producers' control. What are some of those risks that we took into consideration in the development of this program? They were things like mandatory country of origin labeling. We all know how that's affected our industry, as well as disease, some of the diseases you've seen in the media lately. Feed grain costs, you know, they're a little bit more favorable right now. They were up a year or 2 ago. that fluctuates. As far as our exchange rate, we all know what the dollar dropping here has done to help the livestock industry, but that's an issue beyond producers' control. And with consolidation and declining inventory, that has also played a factor within the livestock industry. So what are we doing? We are, as I said, protecting against unpredicted decline in the average weekly area cash price over a defined time period. So you're insuring yourself for a floor price, and if the cash market goes lower, the producer will be paid the difference. It's a one-stop risk management tool in that it has a price floor and an upside price potential. So that means that you're guaranteeing yourself a floor price, but you're also able to take, you're not obligated to sell your animals, so you're able to take the potential of, if you see a price upside in the near future of when your policy is expired, you can take advantage of that too. So you're not obligated to sell, you have a price upside potential as well. It's reflecting Manitoba, Saskatchewan markets. It's flexible, as we'll get into, with a variety of indices and time periods to pick. You don't have to have a minimum purchase or a settlement amount. It's flexible. You have no commitment to sell, as I stated. And it's a 4-week claim window, which is unique to an insurance program as well. So we've divided the program into there's hogs and cattle. So WCPIP is the cattle side of the price insurance program. And as you can see in the western provinces, and let's look at Manitoba in particular, we have the same amount as Ontario and Quebec as far as the beef cows. Western provinces are where the main bulk of animals are. So what are producers trying to do? Obviously, they're trying to capture profit at every stage within the value chain in the cattle production cycle. So with this program, now you'll be able to have an opportunity to mitigate your risk at every stage throughout the production cycle. So let's just take a look at that. As you can see, you know, your commercial operation, you have the options of going to a backgrounding, and then you're going to maybe put them out to pasture or to a finishing lot. So at every stage within this value chain, now you're going to be able to lock yourself into a floor price, and with the costs of your operation, you will be able to ensure that you have a set price for the future. So this will help in your marketing of your animals as well as help you sleep at night. The hog side is WHPIP, and similar to the cattle, it's a program which is a risk management tool, but on the hog side you can protect yourself from border closure and plant disruption. Those two factors really are out of your control as well. It's the same as the cattle side of the program, where obviously producers are trying to capture profit at each stage, whatever type of barns they have within the industry. But at each of the stages within the value chain, this will help you ensure a floor price, and with your costs, ensure yourself a profit. The hog price insurance program, it's offered in months. It's 2 months, 3 months, up to 10 months. The coverage levels are 75 to 95% of the forward price. It expires at the end of each contract month. There's no claim window on the hog side, and the settlement is based on a monthly average price. So how do you apply and how do you know you're eligible for these programs? you have to file a farm income and expense in the province that is the insurer. So if your main income and expenses for livestock are in the province of Manitoba, we are your insurer then at MASC, and you have to be 18. If you want to know the eligibility as far as what do you have to do as far as owning the cattle, you have to own them for 60 continuous days throughout a policy length on the calf and the feeder. You have to own the cattle for 4 weeks prior to the claim window on the fat cattle or fed. And on hogs, you have to own them a minimum of 20 continuous days throughout the policy that you pick. So how does it work? The premise is that you purchase insurance based on your expected sale weight. So you match your insurance to the time period when you plan on selling or when you normally sell your animals. Choose your coverage and pay the premium. So now you have a floor price for the average cash price. If the cash market is below your coverage, during the last 4 weeks of your policy, you can make a claim on the cattle side. So what's important in this is that producers understand that we're not guaranteeing your cattle sale price, but the average cash price of the market. So let me give you an example. If you have a calf policy with a guaranteed floor price, so you've gone in and you've purchased a policy to insure your calves that you have $150 per hundredweight when you sell your calves, but you went to the auction mart and you sold them for $130 a hundredweight. We get reports. You're settled on your program based on 22 auction mart, your policy on 22 auction marts in Saskatchewan or Manitoba. So auction marts are funneling information on a daily basis to us where the average cash price is figured out. And so say, this is just an example, but say that the average in the 22 auction marts for your calf policy time frame was $120. The program will pay you $30 a hundredweight, not 20, because 20 would have been what you received. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that you have to keep in mind that we're not guaranteeing your sales. Just from an administrative point of view, could you imagine trying to keep track of every single individual producer in all 4 Western provinces' sales receipts? Like, you have to keep in mind this is an average cash price from auction mart data. On the Fed side, it's Canfax data as well. It's just a bit off the screen here. So premium coverage rates are available on our WLPIP website. The website offers options to sign up for an email as well. And that email you get sent to you on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays with what the coverage and premiums are offered for up to 12 to 36 weeks, depending if you're in feeder, fed, or calf policies. So you can purchase these policies from 3 to 6:30 our time. And you have to remember, this is a market-based program. So every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the premium and coverage are changing. That's why you're getting email, or that's why you'll have to go on the website and take a look, because every day what we're offering for coverage and premium will be changing. What does our coverage include? It's included in our coverage is price risk, currency risk, and basis risk. And here's how we determine it. So let's just take a second and go through this table. So as I said before, we're offering calf, feeder, and fed as well as hog policies. On the calf side, unweaned calves are under 1 year of age. What's the coverage? How do we figure out the coverage that is being offered in a policy? We base it on the feeder price forecast, and we also adjust it because there is no feeder futures for calves. We adjust it for the price of barley, and then we're taking the difference between a calf of 600 pounds and just using a slide from 850 to 600, because it's 850 pound feeder futures is what we're using. So this availability is in the spring here. We launched on April 8th, offering policies to Manitoba producers. So last week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, yesterday, and today at 3 o'clock, we'll come out a new premium and coverage rate table at 3 o'clock, and those policy lengths are 16 to 36 weeks. Now, for calves, we are only offering policies to the end of May. So May 29th will be the last day in which producers can purchase a policy for calf. Under feeder and fed, that's year-round. Let's take a look at feeder. It's obviously cattle that are being backgrounded or intended to go on grass. We base the coverage on the CME feeder futures, and the Canadian dollar and the basis are also figured into that coverage component. Year-round offerings, 12 to 36 weeks. For the fats, we have, obviously they're expected to be grade A or better, with the CME live cattle futures, the dollar and the basis as well are figured into our coverage. And on the hog side, it's the CME hog futures, basis, and we have a Manitoba factor as well with the Canadian dollar figured in too. This is an example of the table in which you will see an email, or if you go onto the website, of what the coverage premium table looks like. This is as well the feeder price. These are old data. This is what Alberta had, and this is what our program is offering as well. But I just wanted to show you what the premium coverage tables look like. Maybe you're wondering, well, this is old data. What are we doing with that? Well, we're going to show you some new stuff just taken off of our website yesterday. The basis risk, we also offer a fed cattle basis insurance. It's an insurance policy to just cover your basis. It's difficult for producers to manage basis. Even some of your bigger players, they can't control basis, and so with this as well, it covers strictly basis when your CPIP is covering the price risk, currency risk, and basis risk together. It ensures unforeseen cross-border price deviations or slaughter plant disruptions. It's calculated with an Alberta Fed price less the USDA price. And this is an example of that. So when do we purchase a policy? We're purchasing policies from April 8th to May 29th. They're available on WLPIP website, the premium coverage tables. They're emailed to you directly, or you can just visit the website. Credit card is the method of payment. You got to remember it's time sensitive from 3 to 6:30, and just keep in mind we have that deadline of the end of May for calf. And the unique thing about this is that we're not leaving you out in the cold for any step of this. We have a call center, and we'll provide that number here in a second. At any stage or any question that anyone has on the program, if you're on the website or you're looking to purchase or you're have any question or problem, our call center is there to support any questions from producers, as well as our MASC agents and myself. But it's just a phone call away. Settlements. Settlement indices are available on the WLPIP website as well. There's an option for the settlements to come into play, and coverage tables and settlement indices as well are, as I said, all on the website. But you can get an email when you sign up for an email for premium coverage. You're getting an email for settlement as well. What is the settlement criteria? What are we looking at to settle these policies? Well, it's 22 auction marts, as I said. We're using steer-only data. The weight range, on calves, it's 550 to 650 pounds. It's from a statistical point of view, there's never been really a significant price difference in that range, in that 100-pound range. So we're using that data. So there's no adjustments to that. We're taking 1 and 2 head lots out of the settlement. So if there's one animal sold or 2, we're taking that out, and we're dropping the top 12% and the bottom 12% out of the data to settle. So you're getting an average price for an average calf across Saskatchewan and Manitoba. On the feeders, we're sliding the adjustment to 850, but it's all data collected from the auction marts from 750 to 950 pound steers in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, adjusted to 850 pounds. Again, taking 1 and 2 head lots out, and the top 10 and bottom 10% of the sales out as well. For fat cattle, we're taking Canfax data with a ratio of 60-40 to steer heifers with that 1,250 pound range. We're capping it at 20% for producers. If you take a big feedlot, say in southern Alberta, and they dumped a pile of fat cattle or fed cattle, it could influence the market. So we're capping all production or all sales to 20% of that producer's sale. And with Canfax data, it's on the rail, so we're converting that to live. And we're taking the top $4 from the top and bottom of that data. Hogs, USDA, it's undressed weight, and we're using the obviously we have to convert from imperial to metric with an average grade. So when do we settle? We can settle on a 4-week claim window. So when we take a policy out, your policy at the end is, and I'm going to show you what it looks like currently live here in just a second, but a 4-week claim window. So what we're saying is, if you had a policy, say, the end of September, and so let me just grab my calendar here. If say you had a policy that was ending at the end of September, September 29th, September 8th, that's a Monday, that's 3 Mondays before September 29th. You have the opportunity, you get emailed a settlement price. You can settle all or part of your insured weight at that time. So let's say that you had an insurance policy for 500 hundredweight, and on September 8th you get an email and it was insured at a price of, say, $150 a hundredweight, and you got the settlement price was emailed to you that $140 was the average, that was the determined price from the average of the auction marts. You would be in a $10 a hundredweight claim. So with that, you have the opportunity to cash or settle some of your weight that you have on your insurance policy, or if you wanted to cash in or settle your whole insurance policy, you can. So you have that opportunity to do that the 3 Mondays before the end of your policy. So the 8th, the 15th, and the 22nd, you would have the opportunity to cash some or all of your policy in. Obviously, if the average market price is above what your policy is, you are not in a claim position. But on the last week of your policy, it ends, and you're paid whether you're in a claim position or not. You have no option on the last week. So This is available. You have the decision on a Monday to make this decision between 2:30 and 8 p.m. on the Monday. Applications. You can contact your local MASC insurance office or visit the WLPIP website. This is an online program where a computer is essential and internet is essential as well. An email is required to participate in this program, and you can download the application forms from WLPIP website. But we also have pre-printed applications at the MASC insurance office. So even if you print the applications off the WLPIP website, you do have to visit our MASC, your local insurance office, and where our insurance agent will go through it and just make sure that everything is well, and that's where you submit your application. So there is 5 forms here, and at this time I just want to go. I'm going to just jump out of the presentation here and go live so that we can show you what I'm talking about. And hopefully it clicks on here. There we go. So you go on your internet, you go to WLPIP. This is the main home page. So as you can see, if you want to look at the forms for Manitoba, you go on their main page up to forms, and then we have the 4 provinces. This is Manitoba's flag, so the forms for our Manitoba clients. So the left-hand side, we have our identification number form, personal information form, and subscription form. Also for hogs, this is our hog form and the threshold verification form. So I'm not going to go through based on time here, but these are our applications that you can look at or download, or our agents will have these at the insurance office. Our contract of insurance is here as well to look at or download, and we have some optional forms here as well. If you think I haven't got enough information here on this program, we have all types of scenarios and whatnot on the web page that you can find information. As you go down, there's calf, fed, feeder. You learn more about each of these programs and you can check your eligibility. I'd encourage staff or producers to at least sign up for the daily premium emails. And what you do is you just click on here. You give your information as far as your email and your name and last name, and you subscribe. That will sign you up for to start to receive premium and coverage tables every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday throughout the week. So I talked to you about what do our premiums and settlements look like. So if you wanted to know what we had yesterday, you clicked on here, premiums and settlements, say for calves. In Saskatchewan, Manitoba, for April 15th, this is the policies we were offering yesterday. So for calves, on the left-hand side, you have anywhere from $162 a hundredweight to $196 a hundredweight. The policies, this is all market driven. I stated that we are offering policies from 16 to 36 weeks. Well, the market yesterday would only provide policies from 24 to 32 weeks. But let's look at, if you wanted to insure yourself, your calf price, you could $1.96 or $196 a hundredweight would cost you $2.85 a hundredweight yesterday. So these are the lengths of your policies out. This is your insured value on the left. This is the premium that you'll pay. Sometimes on these, see down here, they'll be blank. The market just can't support a policy for that period of time at that premium. It just doesn't support it. So this is what you'll be seeing as far as premium coverage tables go. So we can look up the data on a calendar. You can look up the paths. You can look up 8, 9, 10th, what we offered last week. So this is our main area for premium coverage on the website. So what are some of the main things that I want you to keep in mind are that this is a weight-based program. We're not looking at so many head of cattle. It's weight. So what you have to keep in mind is if you have 50 calves and say you usually market them at 500 pounds, 50 times 500 divided by 100, this gives you your 100 weight. We're not insuring 50 head of calves. And the other main thing that the producers and staff need to keep in mind is that we're not insuring the sale weight of your cattle. We're insuring an average cash market price. With that, is there any questions? Open the floor to that.
I had a question here. I'm not sure if it was answered. Just give me a second. Sorry. Okay, the question was, so do you insure all your calves as steers in the calf program?
Well, yes, like you can insure heifers because it's weight. It's weight, right? So heifers, you can insure your heifer, but it's the weight of your heifer. Settlement price is based on steer data, though. So because it's all about weight, we don't discriminate heifers or steers when you're insuring your calves. You just take your total amount of head times the weight that you want to insure, and that's what you can go with. And when you insure that, there's no minimum weight that you have to insure.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jason. I don't have any more questions. Andrea, do you have anything?
No, that was kind of one of my questions, was just about the heifers, I guess. So that means that if you include your heifers in your weight that you're insuring, like heifers price generally is lower than what steers would be, so would that almost, like, but you're insuring them for the steer price, so you're insuring them for a higher price than you're probably going to get, so wouldn't that almost guarantee a claim payment? Or am I not understanding that right?
No, because the coverage components are the coverage components. So what we had figured out there on the coverage screen, we're using steer data to set up. The volatility of heifers was too much to go with heifer pricing. So I know what you're getting at. You're saying that, but you could take a good heifer to breed. That could be potentially a better price than, say, well, one that was going to be just for slaughter. So the volatility in that those prices is quite high. Mm-hmm. That's why we go with settlement based on steer data.
Okay, it's a little more predictable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't have any other questions for Jason, so I guess I'll just show my screen here. And so thank you to both Jane and Jason for presenting on our cattle chat here this afternoon. When it comes to Jane's topic of the spring grazing, our Manitoba Agriculture website does have a lot of information and a few articles that we've recently put together on there. And Jason went through where you can find some information on the Western Livestock Price Insurance Program website as well. Here's our contact information for us that was on the webinar. If you have any questions or anything about it, please feel free to contact us or contact your local MAFRD Go office. The staff there will be able to direct you in that direction as well. Also, I think we're going to plan to start Cattle Chat maybe a bit earlier next year in the fall. So our next Cattle Chat webinar will likely be in September or October. So watch your email inbox for that invite for in the next round. So thank you all very much for attending, and we will talk to you in the fall.